Okay, here we are. Super. So, thank you. We are doing a podcast here. Everybody has a podcast, so of course I had to have my own. And this is to be the third in the series. We interviewed Alex and Sherry up in Idaho.
Nice.
Yeah, that was really great. And then we did Dean twice on my podcast, Grace Life Northwest, and also on Tim and Sahai's Grace Unfiltered. So that's great. So today we are here with Richard Jordan and Cynthia, John Verstegen, and Lori. We are at the the Oregon Grace Conference, and I thought we had the time we would talk to you guys about some stuff. And my point is to kind of do, I think I said earlier, time past, but now, and ages to come. A little bit about your history, some things going on now, and what you see looking forward. And so I thought I'd start with you, Richard. I'm just curious, and not to be a long thing. Tell those that don't know, how did you get from Alabama to Chicago?
In a car.
Okay, there we go. I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming.
It really was in a Ryder truck. My wife was in the car.
But why did you go to Chicago?
To work at the Berean Bible Society.
Okay.
I'd known Mr. Stam. I got saved I was 15, and I was in Roy Lange's church, Grace Church in Mobile. And Brother Lange was a graduate of Milwaukee Bible Institute when Stam was there. And so about every third year, Stam came to the church to have a meeting. And so I met him when I was a teenager. And when we started the church in Selma, then moved over to Montgomery to the church, started the church there. I communicated with him. You know, the night my oldest son was born, that weekend they held a Bible conference with him at Roy's church. And I went. Now, she gave me permission, but she'd had a very difficult labor, had to have a C-section, not knowing it. And so I went to the meeting, and after the meeting, had a little after session, and Mrs. Lange came in and she said, your mother called, said you need to get to the hospital. And my mother didn't take very kindly to me being at that meeting and not at the hospital with my ailing wife. She had given me permission. She's always stood by me in those things. But so I'd known Mr. Stam pretty much all my Christian life. And he called one night to ask me about something, and we talked about it. And he said, have you ever thought about going to work with me? And I said, no. I'm an Alabama guy. But things progressed, and eventually I agreed to go. To move there and work with him. I spent a week there before made that decision, and I had no clipboard, and I had 12, 14 things that I knew we disagreed about. First was King James Bible, things like 12 in, 12 out, 1 John 1:9, total, everything I could think about, and we spent a week talking about them, together. And at the end of it, he said, well, there's some of this that we're going to disagree about, but we could work together.
Good.
And so we had a good relationship that way, and had it for a number of years. It fell apart toward the end because there were some people that didn't approve of the King James thing. But the King James issue it was the thing they used. The big thing was total forgiveness and non-intervention. Those are the underlying things that motivated most of it. The King James thing was the thing that was easy. How do you tell people, Brother Jordan and I don't agree about everybody being forgiven?
Yeah.
So that's not a winner. But the King James thing was always a thorn in some of the people. Mr. Stam was 90% where we are. You remember, but he just couldn't make that last step of it being the only translation. So, because of the turmoil in other places that kept attacking, it was just time for me to leave. So we went out on our own and so forth. But that's how I went there, was to work with him. And at the same time, when we got to town, I'd been up there looking for a place to live, couldn't find one. So I packed up we'd sold a house in Montgomery. So I packed up my family in the Ryder truck. She's in the station wagon with two of the boys. We go like Abraham, not knowing where he's going to live. Literally, she didn't know. I didn't know where we were going to live.
We had no place to live. Wow.
And
Two young boys.
when we got there,
three of them were born.
Yeah, we got there and ate lunch with him, and he said, "We've got good news. I preached at North Shore Church, who didn't have a pastor at the time, last Sunday, and they said their parsonage is open. You guys can live in their parsonage." So we moved into the church parsonage down in inner city Chicago, and
Wow.
after that was the first week in August. First week in September, I preached there, and I've been preaching there ever since. I became their pulpit pastor.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you about Grace School of the Bible in a minute, but so yeah, I know you started there, but now the church you're with now or having for a long time is two churches that came together, right?
North Shore. Now we were down in uptown Chicago. When you hear about bad neighborhoods back then, that was the bad neighborhood in Chicago. And the church building, auditorium seated probably 800 people.
Oh, wow.
We had maybe 80 or 100 people. From the old, these are all, I don't say ancient, but they were all, I'm 77, they were my age now.
That's why it was
Yeah.
But they were all
older.
all
Yeah.
original O'Hare people. People had been leaving and leaving, but this is the group that wasn't going to leave. And actually, getting to preach for them was exciting to me, but it was exciting to them too. One guy told me, said, "You're the first preacher we've heard since O'Hare talked about the little flock."
Wow.
So it
Wow.
revives things in them.
Hmm.
And that first winter, they played the organ. I told them, "You'll play that pipe organ loud." People began coming off the street. We began to see people getting saved.
That's awesome.
And some really fascinating stories about that. And the congregation said, "Oh man, we got a chance to," but there's no chance.
Mm.
And when they had a business meeting, and lady asked Franklin Anderson, "Franklin, what's the condition of the building?" He said, "It's beyond me keeping it up.
Mm. Yeah.
Wow.
We just sold the building."
Yeah.
And it broke their hearts. But we moved out, eventually merged with Norwood, whose pastor had died, but they only had a handful of people left.
Okay.
And that's where Shorewood came from.
Okay.
We met with them for a year, and then two genuinely different local churches, believing race message, but different. And the preaching is what brought them together. They came together around the message. And so we started, actually, we merged the churches, and 2 months later, Chuck Wiltshire and a bunch of Sherry Curse was in that group, and
Also, Sherry's been around a long time.
yeah, and Debbie and so forth.
Oh, and Debbie too.
Not Debbie Keeble, but
Debbie Johnson.
Debbie Johnson.
Debbie,
Yeah.
who was out by Alice.
And there were a number of them that came in with Chuck, and they were Shorewood. They'd never been North Shore Norwood,
Okay.
and that made Shorewood. And from then on, we were genuinely Shorewood.
So, right.
And the ministry's just been a fascinating thing for 4 years.
I've been back there only once, but when I was back there, I was told that you get your building that used to be a restaurant called Chez Paul, which I think is so interesting. House of Paul.
Yeah.
How wonderful is that?
It was built as that. Then it was bought by a company called the Lighthouse.
No.
And the two guys that built it, the outreachment, the company, one of them's dad was a grace believer.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's
Okay.
amazing.
So when we bought the place, they were happy to have us buy it.
Mm.
Some Muslims wanted to buy it too,
Oh, wow.
but they favored us.
So, John, I'm going to ask you a little different question. I told you, instead of the craziest thing that I've ever heard of, if you don't know, John is, and are you from San Antonio as well? Okay, so they're both from San Antonio. John ends up in Southern California, and he plays hockey, and this huge hockey fan. And I thought for years it was field hockey, and then I realized it was ice hockey. I don't know how it is that.
Yeah, it was roller hockey.
It was roller hockey. Okay, that makes a little more sense then.
Yes, yeah.
But my question then is, instead of how did you get from San Antonio to Southern California? Because you were in Southern California because of the military, right? And I know you had a chance to go to Washington, D.C., but you didn't. So tell us a little bit about that decision.
Yeah. It actually wasn't Washington, D.C. It was when I was in the Marine Corps as a captain. I had just received orders. I was going to become the commanding officer of a reserve unit in, I believe it was Pittsburgh.
Okay.
That's a big deal.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
When I got my commission, I had fully intended on just making a full career. I wanted to be a general, go all the way up and everything. And so that would have been a nice move just in terms of career wise and everything. But we had started that little teeny tiny Grace Church there in Lady's house. I think we had 7 or 8 ladies.
Oh,
and-
wow. One man.
Yeah, one guy.
Okay.
But they had the heritage of these ladies having a long history
Yes,
too,
they did.
that went way
Yeah,
back.
they went back.
Wow.
Yeah. So we meet in their home and then starting to see a little bit of growth and everything. And so when for me, it really was a real struggle to, okay, what do we do now? Do I stay in the Corps, take this, these orders, move on the next 3 years, that kind of a thing, or do we stay here with the ministry?
Do you
It was-
have kids yet?
We had Christopher and Joshua.
Yeah, we had both.
Yeah, we had 2, yeah.
The 2 of them.
Yeah, and so
Big decision.
it was,
Yeah.
yeah. And so when I based my decision on, I remember to this day, I based it on that passage in Philippians 1 where the Apostle Paul conveys the idea that he was in strait betwixt 2 very good things, you know. And I thought, well, it'd be fine career-wise to stay in the Corps and, you know, take care of the family, whatever, that type of thing. And I knew enough at that point to realize that God's not going to tell me one way or the other. He would let me make a decision based on the thing of greater value. And I think I had heard you at that point talk about that as well, is that just that principle of learning to make a choice based upon greater value. So we made that decision that we're going to go ahead and stay. And so it was pretty interesting when I resigned my commission, because it was a big deal for a lot of reasons, even all my upper command and everything. So anyway, that's how we wound up staying in Southern California and have been there ever since, basically.
Wow.
It's not a big deal to give up your career in Southern California. It's not like it's expensive down there or anything, is it? and so you guys have met for as long as I think I've been aware in the municipal buildings, right, of the San Juan Capistrano?
Well, it's interesting because we started the Bible study. So a little bit, again, about the back history. You knew, both of y'all knew Pastor Keith Spolstra. So he was in San Diego. We were in San Juan Capistrano, so about an hour and 10-minute drive, whatever. So our little group, we'd pile all these ladies in our van. It was a Volkswagen van again. And to get it to go 45 miles an hour was, anyway, so we would take the group down there and meet with Keith. We probably did this once every 6 weeks and have lunch with him and then come back and whatever. Eventually that just became too complicated for a lot of reasons and everything. But so we were meeting there. And then one of the guys went home to be with the Lord. And the place where we actually had the memorial service for him, the guy who was the owner of that mortuary, he actually came up to us, me, and said, "Hey, by the way, we've got this little chapel here. You can use it on Sundays for free if you want." And we thought, well, why not give it a try? Of course, the old joke is we never grew because everybody died to get in.
Yeah, we needed
So we
more.
met there for actually several years, and then we moved to San Juan Capistrano and started renting community service buildings from there. So that kind of a little bit of history on that, but we've been there since the late 80s, I think.
Oh,
in that
long
area.
time.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because we lived down there in 88 or 89, right in the area. And it would have been nice. It would have been wasted on me at that time. You never know. So it's exciting to see how those things were. And
Beginning years.
yeah, those beginning years. I mean, so many people with us up in Portland, and I even see online sometimes, are so new to the grace message. They don't know the history of it. And I'll get to something about that later. I think that's a problem, that people don't know the history and think all of a sudden it just popped up and here it is, and don't know some of the struggles that went on early, and a lot of the working through things, which kind of brings me to Grace School of the Bible and some things about that. Because I think I heard you say one time that you guys were still working through some things sometimes as you were doing the teaching there at Grace School of the Bible, and your intent was not actually to start Grace School of the Bible, was it? You were just teaching a handful of guys back there?
Well, when Chuck Wilcher came into the church, and I met, stop just a minute. Can I tell you the first time I ever saw him?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
The first time we did a regional conference like this Oscar Woodall, was insistent that we do some of these things. I knew nothing about how to do it. He said, well, let's do it in Atlanta. And I made arrangements on the phone with Atlanta Capital Airport Inn. And so we have it, and then unbeknownst to me, he'd send the ad in the Searchlight. John and Lori showed up, a little bouncer with Christopher, just a little baby.
All the way from California, though. That's a
And
big
he
deal.
was-
No, we were stationed in Georgia at the time,
Oh,
so it
okay,
was,
okay.
I think, maybe 2-hour drive.
It's like
Okay.
a 6-month training.
Okay.
Yeah, so they showed up for the conference. That's the first time I met him. And I went and told my wife, said, that was a really young couple there with a baby, bouncing the baby in the thing. Said, yeah, got a future to them. So that was the first time I met them. But when at Shorewood, when Chuck came into the church and he started working with the young people, and that would have been in 81, 82, I guess, I can't remember. And then Ted Fellows, both of them separate from each other, came and said, we want to preach, would you train us?
Wow.
And I said, well, I'll talk with you about it. And we made arrangements to meet at a certain time. You think about it, I'll think about it, and I'll tell you what it'll require. And by the time we met, there were about 6 or 8 guys
Wow.
that they'd talked to. And so I made some, it's going to be 3 years. You don't give it 6 weeks off, and you got to do it. And I made some, if I'm going to give my time, you're going to do this.
That's right.
And they all agreed, and they
Okay.
all did it. Alan Leach is in Marathon, Florida, and he was doing our audio cassettes. And he called me one day. He says, now, I want you to video these classes. And I said, what? I don't know what it-
You got to go back to the 80s.
VHS had just come out. And Beta and VHS arguing and back and
Yeah.
forth. And he said, well, I've already ordered the camera. It's on the way. So I can't do that. My son Rick was 13. So he became the cameraman.
13.
And he ran the camera. He would take the videos the next day, mail them to Alan. Alan would get it the next day, and then he'd call Rick, tell him what to do, how to do the lighting. So the first 6 weeks, you get pictures of the ceilings and the floor and me. And I didn't have a lectern, so I had books stacked up. It was pretty rinky-dink. But the doctrine is there.
Yeah.
And the edification process. And so I had done that to myself. After we got married, went up to Selma, started the church, and I spent 3 or 4 years. I'd been to college, been to Bible school, got kicked out of there because of the grace message. And I said, well, I don't know what I'm doing if I'm going to preach. So I understood Romans 16, the edification process. And I said, I need to get that myself. So I spent the 3 or 4 years we lived in I spent most of that time training myself in that. So when these guys want to be trained for the ministry, I'll do for you what I did for myself.
Gotcha.
So that was where that came from. And it was, we didn't have a name. We called it PTC, Pastoral Training Class,
Oh, okay.
because you had to have some kind of name. We met in the office, the conference room of the Bible Society on Tuesday night, and then at the church
Wow.
on Wednesday night. And, the
You
folks
met
were-
2 nights a week.
folks are very supportive of it. And so
Until they weren't, right?
Yeah.
until they won't.
Yeah.
After we did the 3 years, John was the first person that went through it on the video.
Right.
He wanted to do that. I said, I need somebody to be first. So he was first. And if there's any glitches or problems, he could. We had my grading system, the best grading system I ever had in college was a biology teacher. He said, it's 100 questions. Whoever gets the most, so you got 89 is top grade. That'll be the bottom. Your score will be the top, and we'll do, numerator and denominator, and that'll be your percentage. So that's the curve. The guy that got the most, if he didn't get 100%, that's on me. So,
So
the
that
problem was
becomes-
that John got 100% of everything.
Oh, there you go.
So it blew the curve.
Well, that's what I've been. That's what I have heard. I have been told that nobody's got a test scores and done as well as John did.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Now, there's a caveat to that, though. John's the grader. So the curve, there might be a thumb on that.
Just a little two thumbs.
Everybody knows that, I've gone through half of grade school of the Bible. I meant to look, I think it was 17 years ago that I started. And
Talk about a gap year.
yeah, gap year. Yeah. But,
Yeah.
at one point, I was only taking on for odd anyhow. And somebody once said, well, John's the grader. I wouldn't take it for credit either. When I did it though, I don't know if you remember this. We're at the old conference center and it was a rainy day and we just had lunch or dinner and you and I are walking over and I go, I'd really like to go through grade school though, just to audit it. How would I do that? And he gets that little grin on his face, right? You know the one. Out of his pocket becomes the application. I said, okay, that's kind of weird. Thank you. And I go, I don't want to teach. I just want the information. He goes, well, the secret to teaching is to have more information you can possibly give in an hour. And I'm thinking, did he not hear me? I don't want to teach. And here we are. So, yeah, I think it goes without saying, grade school of the Bible has been such a blessing. And so many people have gotten met and have gotten trained and edified from it. Yeah. So let me talk a little bit now about what's going on and maybe the future as well. What do you guys see as the future of conferences? I mean, conferences were originally, as I understand it, designed to bring people together in the local community and maybe help foster the local churches or as an outreach, because at that time people were taking the newsletter or the searchlight or some other things, and maybe we clearly didn't have the internet back then to come together. Now, as I look, I mean, we've had a great turnout this weekend here, and I'm very happy about that. And we did last year down there. But what I also notice is with the online, people stay away. I mean, we have some people that are 15 minutes away that watch online. And where do you see this going and the purpose for conferences? I mean, the fellowship's been fantastic. I mean, absolutely. But what do you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I'm a big supporter of conferences.
No, yeah.
And I know all three of us are, because I think one thing that it does, it really, the fellowship concept
Yes.
is so important. And it is always a setting, like there's several new people here that are new to a lot of basic things.
Right.
And how critical it is, not only for the new people that have those real basic questions, but for people that have been here several years, to hear the answers again. Because the things that the guy was struggling with, well, believers struggle with those things. So I think one of the big benefits of continuing to have the conferences is the personal interaction.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this, I remember when everything was shut down during COVID and we didn't have conference, I think it was for 2 years.
Yeah,
Like
it was 2 years.
and one of the most frequent responses that we had once we had conference again was how good it was to be back together in person.
Absolutely.
To see someone face to face.
Yeah.
So there is that aspect there. And also, even though over the years you have a lot of people that have come in and go and you don't see them again, there still seems to be a fresh inflow of people, which necessitates always going back to the basics and making sure we have the basics down.
To come back to that point, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the six of us here, Melvin and Hillis, my dad, and Janet are the only people I think that were at this conference 15 years ago. So it is amazing how, to your point, it is, and that's great. We love having everybody here in that teaching.
And the necessity, no matter how, like you've conveyed it this way over the years too, that no matter how deep or how you get into the doctrine, you always go back to the basics, and because you can't get there if you're not here.
That's right.
Right.
And it just really stirs up the basics in a wonderful way again. And just to appreciate
people
it.
where they're at.
Yeah.
Right.
Do that over a screen. You get them
Right.
to teach a generic lesson, but
Yeah.
here they can ask their own questions and.
Yeah. But another thing to me, to in a conference like this and in a church setting too, you can, when you you can kind of see in the eyes of the people if they're even tracking with you.
No, absolutely.
You know, you can say, wait, okay, I said something, I didn't get this, so I need to say it a different way. And
So interesting.
and it's hard to do sometimes because we do a lot of Zoom classes, as you do Zoom and everything like that. You guys do it. Is it once a month? You'll have a Friday night special and everything, which is great. But that's harder to sense on a Zoom class, and you almost can't even.
Yeah.
One is because people don't turn their cameras on, so yeah. So yeah, I think whatever we do, we need to keep these things going.
Oh, I completely agree, and so I do that encourages me because I've always been we all have a huge supporter of these. To continue to do the online things fine, but to continue to put them out. I mean, because this conference, like I said, we have people from Bangkok and Australia, and that's great. I mean, that is really great. But it's
important for them because
absolutely
they can't drive 15 minutes.
They can't drive and do what we do here on the West Coast, and I know there's a lot in the Midwest and of that nature. So I think that's really good too.
But don't you think there's believers all over that grace believers don't have people to fellowship with on a normal basis, like every week?
Well, that's
And
why
this
people are
gives
willing
them
to
that-
drive 100 miles to come to these
Yeah.
conferences, and people do.
It
'Cause it's
gives
that
them
connection
fellowship
with people.
time,
Yep.
that connection to meet people and know they're not
Alone.
stranded
They're not
alone.
stranded. They're not alone.
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
others that believe this stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
It's funny because we used to always talk about the stranded grace believers, and it'd be nothing to drive an hour 3 or 4 times a week. That's what we did from our house to Vancouver at the church. We were 3 times a week. If there was something going on at church, we were there. That was nothing. And now sometimes you get a little frustrated though. People are there, but the TV's fine. But yeah, to make contact with all these people in the different groups is great. I think we see that in the Idaho conference. Really, you see some local people that have fellowship because that Idaho conference is there. All right, so I don't want to talk about. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
would be interested too here
Yeah.
because you have even a different perspective. One is regionally, you guys have the biggest of the grace conferences throughout the year
And you
have
go
had
to them.
many, many years. And even though there's a lot of work that goes into this conference, a lot of work in our conference, but nowhere near what you guys have put involved.
Oh,
And
right.
So certainly interested in your take on
Yep,
this,
absolutely.
the future of it.
Well, we couldn't do what we do in Chicago if it wasn't for the ladies at Shorewood.
Yeah.
We'll have 40, 45 workers
Wow.
that put that meeting together. We have, 300-400 people at the conference. I think this past year, we never had less than 200 in a meeting.
Wow.
And there's about 500 different individuals. And the evening meetings are in the 350,
That's
we
great,
had
guys.
100 kids.
100 plus kids.
That's
Now,
great.
is this the January, the July meeting?
And it's when we left the Berean Bible Fellowship, which is the Cedar Lake Conference, it was the Coast National Organization that Stam set up back in the 60s to oppose the liberalism in the Grace Gospel Fellowship. People don't know about the history of the Grace Movement. That's, the Grace Gospel Fellowship started in 1940 with O'Hare, Stam, Baker, and the whole, the basic core group of the Grace Movement back then. And in the 60s, they had, after O'Hare died, they really moved into New Evangelicalism. And Stam said, no, we're not going that way. And there was a split. And the Berean Bible Fellowship was just always that protest organization. Well, that was where I was because I was part of them, and I agreed with them about that. But when we left there, after I left the Bible Society, we weren't welcome there. So we're going our own, and we met. A bunch of us were in a meeting just to get together, and one of the guys says, "Well, what are we going to call the new organization?" And I told him, I said, "Which one of you wants to nominate me for something like that?" And I don't go for the outside the local, anything beyond the local church, I don't think ought to be organized. An ad hoc committee to do something is fine, but not a quote national. Dean said this morning about the
hierarchy, kiss in the ring.
Yeah, and he's right about that. And the issue there is who writes the check? How big is it? So I just have always gravitated against that. But on the other hand, having fellowship with the different brothers, we had 50, 60 guys that were doing ministry. And so it was a school meeting. We'd already were doing the Grace School of Bible April meeting. And so let's have a family conference because the guys, but you needed something for your families. And that's where the summer conference came from. And it was it was important to do back then, and it still is.
Good.
Yeah.
And because I don't care how many people on the internet, there's a lot of different guys got ministry on the internet that really don't know anything about the history of, a lot of them, I'm shocked that some of them don't even know who Mr. Stam is. And nobody that understands mid-acts dispensationalism isn't indebted to things that differ.
Correct. Correct.
And
Absolutely.
even if you don't know it.
Yeah.
And because some of these guys don't want to tell people where they learn what they learn, and so forth. So you get the further away from it, you get the less of the history people know.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that allows, with the internet, you can be very insular
Yes.
kind of thing. And it almost gets to be like the old Plymouth Brethren, where I got my group, you got your group, you got your group.
Right.
And I've tried not to have that be the issue. We haven't had to worry about people that are of contrary mind because they're not allowed to be, they don't allow themselves to be a part of us, which is, that's their choice. But as far as the conferences are concerned, we had a wedding last weekend at the church. I married a couple. She's from Buffalo, New York. He's from Minnesota. They met at the Bible conference.
Oh, wow.
There's another couple, and one of his grooms and one of the maids. They met at the Bible conference. We married them at Shorewood, and
That
so
is neat.
in the group there was probably 15 of the people, younger people who had met at the Bible
Oh,
conference.
wow. That's awesome.
And so
So it's actually a dating service.
There you go. Yeah.
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 Wow.
Yeah.
When
we hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
You bet.
Well, two of my sons met their spouses at the Bible
That's
conference.
amazing.
But what I see is this year with him and us trying to figure out him backing down a little bit. We've got teenage girls coming that'll graduate high school this year. They want to teach. They
Oh,
want to be a part of the July conference ministry.
Wow.
Our biggest problem is finding something for them to do.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, let's back up a little bit, hold on, because they're still teenagers.
Yeah,
They're
right.
17, 18 years old, but I'm trying to work right now how to figure out how to get them in next year and let them start training
Be of
to take
service of some
over.
sort. Yeah.
Because, and they go to Shorewood, they want to teach at Shorewood, they want to be a part of the little kids
That's
ministry.
great.
That's so great.
That is so
And-
wonderful.
He married their moms and dads,
Wow.
and now these children are graduating high school. They're not real interested in going off to colleges and getting their minds warped.
Yeah. Wow.
Really, so I don't know what they're going to do that way, but this year they've expressed we want to learn how to teach
That's
and
awesome.
how we want to be a part of the
That's
ministry,
fantastic.
and that just gives you.
Oh, I know.
Absolutely.
You want to foster
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, that
You
next
know,
generation.
I keep trying to put the bug in my son-in-laws,
Yeah.
and they're kind of hemming and hawing. One's trying to build a career, and the other one's still dealing with his coming out of his Catholicism. And I get it, and he's probably the one that has the best chance of being a teacher. But it's interesting. I'd love to see that out here. What do you say?
That's the fruit of a functioning local church.
Yes.
There you go.
And, we're not fighting everybody else. In fact, that's what I determined to do to start with. We just build a local church.
Yep.
And everything
Foster
we do,
for them.
I mean, people know me around the country, but they know me as Shorewood.
Mhm.
They know the school. Some people know who Grace Impact Ministries is, but Shorewood, because that's the basis of everything we do. And it didn't start easy. It took a while to get it done. But yeah, and that's where that, in a conference like this, the personal attachment fellowship. Here's a lady right there that doesn't have anybody to fellowship with, and that's that ability to meet people, see them, know them.
And I will say, there's a group of young people, and they meet every year at the summer conference, and they're steadfast
fun.
friends.
Isn't that
Yeah.
great?
And
Yeah.
it's about between 20 and 30 of them.
That's great.
Last year, and they tried this year, we always go to Ridge Farm the weekend after Labor
Labor
Day. And that's a little bitty country church, not many people. Last year, they all met up, these 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. They filled 3 rows of pews, and all got from Michigan, from Illinois, from around, got and met at the conference. And that's
Oh.
the benefit
Yeah.
of
Wow.
that
Going to the
conference.
conferences.
That's meeting at the conference and the benefit, and they're
great.
just steadfast friends,
That is neat, huh?
Yeah.
Lifelong.
Yeah, best
Yeah.
buddies. And we-
best friends.
One of
So,
at that meeting, it was fast. We were sitting on the front row, and there was a bunch of how those kids, 8, 9 year, 10.
well, no, it's, 8, 9-year-olds. This year, they were sitting on the front, and of course, they still got to go to class. The junior high schoolers have to
Okay.
sit in their service this year. And I can't remember the hymn we were singing.
Alas, and did my Savior bleed?
Yeah, and we were singing it, and the teacher, they were headed out, and they're like, "Oh no, we don't go yet. We go for after we're done with the music."
These songs.
Those kids, there was about 4 or 5 of them. Every one of them stood up and sang those hymns without a hymn book,
Wow.
That's
and
great.
didn't miss a word. And
Oh,
of
that's
course, they were
beautiful.
Shorewood kids.
I mean, that's beautiful, right? Because you know it's in their soul.
Yeah.
And they'll
It's
lean on
in
that.
them, and
Yes.
they'll lean on, yeah.
Yep.
So,
Because you put that in them, and that's what the local meetings. Yeah, I'll say one thing about the conferences, and like I said, we've been doing it. John started out there; they were some of the early ones. In those days, the first night we call it the chart night,
Right.
and I would teach the chart. Whatever the theme was, you can teach it off the chart.
Yes,
Yeah.
true.
And the reason we did that, and we would have 150, 200 people at a meeting, and that was the night everybody could bring their friends that they've been talking to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's kind of back down the last few years. We don't do that really anymore, which I've noticed that. And some of that means that maybe we aren't having that
Outreach is the
influx
Outreach, yeah.
that outreach.
Well, there's a couple people here that have brought newer people. I can
Yeah.
name 3 different ones who have brought someone.
Yeah,
And
Which is great.
and I
It's a
like
commitment to
I
keep
like
those.
getting back to that. I've been very intentional about trying to get that in the March conference or whatever it is, or May, whenever it is we have in Portland. Even last night though, you didn't, maybe we have this chart up. I don't even need to draw the chart, but you went through the edification
Yeah, well,
process and how important that is.
and
Simple
John,
documents that mean a lot.
we've been using, and that's the good thing about using it is that. But it struck me several years ago that we don't really do the chart night on Friday night anymore. It's not that we don't do it. It's just that always for years and years
Yeah.
was the
It was the opening message.
yeah, and because you could teach the chart, and like I said, get to whatever the topic is,
Right.
but it's in the context of that. But it gave an opportunity for for outreach kind of thing.
Mhm.
See,
And that's that's here where we are here. We're this much more remote
Right.
kind of a setting, which when we're meeting in Canada, we were kind of remote.
a little bit. All right. Well, let me change subjects a little bit. I'm gonna ask about the grace movement specifically in a moment. But Richard, you said for years that the next 10 years is the most important decade that you're in. So as you look out at Christianity in America, not just in the grace movement, just Christianity in America, what do you? And I'll ask you the same question. Do you guys see in the next 10 years? And I think you guys maybe have a unique, because you've always said too, okay, if you want to go visit the world, you're there. Chicago, you can see the world, and you're in Chicago. You're in Orange County, and without making the jokes, Orange County is very liberal, very anti-religion. We're up in Oregon right now, so we're very similar up here. So there's kind of a different perspective that maybe you each bring to that same question. When you look forward, what do you see the next 10 years?
Well, I've been a student of the book, The Fourth Turning, since the 90s. And their current edition is, one of the guys died, but the other author, he just wrote a book a couple of years ago called The Fourth Turning is Here. And he predicted 32 as the time when that cycle switches. And I think it's probably right. And so you're going through the winter time now, which is when you have the decay, things go away, you see culture actually going through that. And we're probably right in the middle of that, which means in the cycles of our culture, you're really going back to probably Christianity in the first 2 centuries, where it's no longer the institutional acceptance. Our our country is based on what they call Judeo-Christian principles.
Yes.
You know, Blackstone and those things, and those things come out of the Scripture. Freedom of speech, freedom, justice, and that kind of thing. Colossians chapter 4 has always been a passage that kind of does it for me.
As readers or prescriptions?
You put them in your
Those are just readers.
If I can see it.
You put them in your pocket.
Give your service that which is just and equal. Justice and equality for all. That's in essence Western culture.
Yeah.
It was done because people weren't believers, but they had that cultural idea. And our culture, of course, you see with the assassination of Kurt and all the stuff, you see the outrise and the anger against that. You see that those cultural foundations aren't there. We aren't there as a culture. And I don't think there's a way to put it back, because that takes generations. It takes 4 generations to change something. Well, if you're at the end of the 4th, you got to go 4 to get it back. So we don't have 4. So what does that mean for the ministry? This means, boy, there's going to be opportunities to preach and to teach, but you're going to have to get rid of the chaff, the so-called evangelical bigness, entertainment stuff that, instead of edifying and building people, it's the fluff and entertainment. It's the era of the mega church entertainment fad is basically over.
Well, yeah, I've seen there's a decay in that big time.
And for the better, because it gets the onus off of us for that's us. So I look at it as great. I'm not going to live long enough to see all that, but what I'm glad about is we've got guys coming up that are people like yourself that are younger. You'll be able to live through it and go preach the word. This is going to be a wonderful opportunity, and you have to be willing to shed the old forms maybe of doing things. They met in houses, they met in schools. They didn't have mausoleums and buildings and stuff, which I've got a building. I got nothing against that. I think it's a good thing to have a permanent place in a community. You demonstrate permanence and commitment to the local area. But as I said, our building is built to Shea Paul, the restaurant, and then was the Lighthouse Communications Center before it was an office building kind of thing. And in a metropolitan area, that's pretty much all you can do anymore.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be a great day to minister, to get out and do the internet. I've done radio and TV for decades, and what radio and TV are basically over.
Yeah.
AM radio is they're even trying to take. The only reason they still have it in an automobile is because the national alert system is AM based.
Okay.
And so the FCC won't let them take AM. They're trying to take them out.
Another example of efficiency in government.
Exactly.
Well, it keeps us alive. But so the younger people have a key interest in how to get the message out. But then we talk about the impersonal side of it.
Right.
And so how do you then have a local ministry when all of your hearers in Bangkok or Idaho and you're in Florida or something? But those are challenges that I think, wise people figure out, because the issue is preach the word, be instant, in season, out of season. And if we're out of season for a while, I think we will be, then okay, that's fine.
It's interesting. I want to ask you the same thing, but it's interesting, and I don't want to get off on this, but the thing with Charlie Kirk, I knew who he was. I watched him on YouTube. He was a guy that went to college campuses. What I didn't realize is the influence he had on my son-in-laws and my daughter-in-laws. They listened to it. I heard somebody say, well, if you don't know who he is, your children do, even if they don't like him. And somebody said he was their generation's Rush Limbaugh, which, again, forgetting the politics, okay, that's how that group gets reached today.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not reached on the AM radio. They're reached through Instagram and things that we're going to have to learn how to make work.
If anything works against what I just said, it's the amazing depth of the younger generation, that millennials, or whatever age group it's going
Whatever
to
the
be.
next generation is called.
The impact he had on them. My
Our
16-year-old grandson, I was riding with him the day after, and I said, "Will you guys talk about Kirk at school?" He said, "Oh, that's all we talked about all day."
Wow.
He said, "I've been following him for 2 years."
Yeah.
And
Wow, nobody knew it.
Wow.
no, I didn't. I mean, I knew who he was, but I knew nobody was following him. The depth of, Newsom, the governor of Georgia, of California, his son's following him. And
He was the first guest on Newsom's show.
So you say, even people didn't agree with him or following him, but he's saying and articulating biblical things,
Yes,
Bible
he is,
things,
right.
and just the ability to let's define the terms we're talking about so we know what we're talking about. We're both talking about the same thing. That ability to think. And I've been thinking about how widespread that is.
Yeah.
Now there's a big gap between that and the other side, and the older people who are going to be in control for a while. But you got that other group coming up underneath them.
Mhm.
But isn't that fun? You just said something. Isn't that fundamentally what we spend a lot of time at Grace conferences or even in Grace, some of these defining terms?
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe we express it a little differently, but I mean, that was what Q&A was about. Well, what about this? Well, let's see. Is that really what it says? Let's get into the context of it. So with, like I said, being in Southern California, not making the jokes. I mean, I live in a very similar environment, if you will. What do you see in the next 10 years?
I'm just going to basically reiterate what
Okay.
both of y'all said, and that is in the light of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and that the impact that he has had worldwide, and mostly on the younger generation, but not only the younger generation. It's amazing the impact he's had. So in reference to the idea of the fourth turning, that we're in that and we're going to come to the end of that, and what did he say, 2032, whatever, with the rush going to go back to church now,
Mhm.
what's that going to produce? And that's a big question, I think, is yet to be answered. There clearly is some kind of a interest, some kind of a hunger in young people's mind about, purpose, meaning, why are we here, where do we come from, where are we going, what's the meaning of all this? So like you said, this could be one of the greatest opportunities in, how many years. And so we have to figure out how to effectively and efficiently address the questions that they, at least at this present time, seem to be asking, and present the answers to them from a Grace perspective. Because they're not going to get that in all the churches out there.
Right.
A lot of the posts that they were putting, they said that the church attendance was last Sunday just skyrocketed. Not just all over the U.S., all over the world.
Not something that.
But then
wow.
people posted that they
That's
went to
right.
church and that either heard something bad about Charlie Kirk or nothing at all, nothing about actual, hey, this is a big event. And so they said, I'm not going back to that church. I don't think the church is going to teach me something. And so let's find those people. How do we find them in our respective areas?
Exactly. And that's the deal. The other thing I've noticed lately is when people talk about this, Chris, from some things that were said and the president said, is there's a lot of, or am I good enough to get to heaven?
Yes.
We had that conversation here today,
Yeah.
right? And that's, I think, needs to be is a great
Clarify.
fertile ground to address that. No, you're not worthy. Let's get over ourselves.
I'll just add something about we're in Chicago land. The groups that are growing around us are the Muslims and the Hindus.
Yes,
Mm.
it's scary.
Mm.
There's a paganizing of America, of our cultures.
Interesting.
And where we live in a little town. It's interesting. We live in a little town of about 18,000 people, surrounded by.
Chicago.
We have a wonderful city government, a great little town. It's like a little oasis. Town right south of us is just bonkers. South of them is another good little town. So the borders can make a lot of difference. You see how a border can make a lot of difference. But we go into I don't go to Walmart, but you go into the mall or go to
Grocery store.
Costco or the grocery store, and half the people can't understand what they say.
Yeah.
Foreign languages.
Wow.
And actually, I've thought about buying that little thing that translates in your ear.
Yeah,
Then I
right.
thought, well, maybe I don't want to hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
So ministry, and what that does to ministry, grace believers want to talk about water baptism, Great Commission, all these kind of things. And all of a sudden, you talk to a Muslim and you have no way to defend the Bible, the deity of Christ. You got no idea what he's about. We're going to have to teach people. We do these fair ministries at Shorewood in the summertime where we go to fairs, set up booths and stuff, have a it's basically evangelism kind of thing. And we're teaching the people how to when a Muslim comes up, what do you say to them? How do you approach them? So we're going to have to, this again, that first century idea, Paul goes into a pagan world
Right.
Mhm.
and
Right.
he addressed them. We're going to have to get beyond, as grace believers, just talking about the little things that you know, you look at Facebook and you see all the folks are talking about the gospel and this and this or that, and the next thing, and it's focused on the things that liberated them from the religious tyranny.
Right.
But you're going to go out over here, and you're talking about these churches. Most of these churches that they went to
Yeah.
are they're just going to
Just
go
liberal churches.
just you know, go swimming, and you're just as well off.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we are aware of the fact that, you see, the gospel is the same to a Muslim as a Hindu, but you have to get to the place where they can hear what you're saying. And just being aware of that. So I think in all of that, it's not so much that you back up from what you're saying, you just realize that on the edification scale,
Sure.
you got to talk to people where they are spiritually.
Right.
Right.
They used to come in the door ready for Romans. Now they don't even come in the door ready for John.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to be not talking over their head.
Right.
And I find that, you know, people for years have told me, we watched Les Feldick on the TV. He introduced us to Right Division. Then we saw you and we got to grow.
Yeah.
And I, honestly, when we started the TV program back in 1992 with Tom, 1990 actually, when I met Les, I thought, I can't teach at that level. I just can't do it. That's simple. It's just, that's why he's so popular, is because he teaches at the level
Okay.
all the people out there that know nothing are. They don't know anything, but they know they need to know something. They hear him teach them something, which they aren't getting at church. And wow, you know,
Right.
a third of the meetings he had were in Lutheran churches. And you say, well, isn't that interesting? But that's where people are willing to learn. Of course, you're going where to teach. And I realize I can't teach at that level. I just can't do it. I try, you know, to think about it. And I think, well, okay, we have to have some people that can.
Yeah.
Yeah. We really have to start at the basics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we get
But people
excited
aren't-
about.
A lot of people aren't even raising religions anymore
Yeah.
like they used to be. So you're right. They don't even know who
Genesis was
God is.
Genesis, wasn't
Tell
that
me
a
who
movie?
God
You know,
is.
or something
Yeah.
like that.
Well, I think
They don't know the authority of the Bible. Simple concepts.
But if you look at how long has it been when we grew up in a public school system, we listened to the Lord's Prayer every morning. You did your flags, you did the Christian flag, but you were told and taught that there was a higher power to be accountable to. That is gone. You have to go back now and teach young people that there is a
I
higher
know.
power to be
Yep.
accountable to.
Yep.
And because
And who
these
he
young
is.
people
And who
don't.
he is. Yeah.
Yeah, you're really back before basics.
Yes, you're right.
You know, with people.
One of the verses I teach, I tell our people, see, when you talk to a Hindu, they got all kinds of gods. Deuteronomy 10, God said, I'm the God, big G of the little G's.
Right.
So you've got all these gods. The God of the Bible is God of those gods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big-
Well, that,
Right.
They have to know that.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And that turns out to be a way to get to, so what does big G God say?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Who's the boss?
yeah,
That's
so
what
you're not saying they don't have these other gods don't exist, because there are other gods.
Exactly.
So,
Are you know, we talk to people, well, how do you have an answer to this, or how do you have an answer to that? And I said, well, you need to have some this, but a lot of times you know who you're going to talk to,
Yes.
right? A lot of times it's family, right? We're coming in the holiday season, and I tell you, you know what Joe's questions or thing. You can prepare for that, but you need to. And so, I mean, if that's what's going on in a person's area, then a person would be good to know that. So you have that response. I think that's a great thought.
I had a friend years ago that is with the Lord now, was a Jehovah's Witness. He established 35 Jehovah's Witness calls.
Wow.
And then he got saved and learned right division.
Wow.
And that's how he got saved. And I asked him, they teach them, we got 95 questions we can answer. That's why they can answer your questions. You can learn them and you go, and the 2x2 ones to learn. He went through all that stuff. And he said, what got me was Ephesians 3. He said, so when I talked to a Jehovah's Witness, I said, wait. And he reads from Ephesians 3. So they don't know anything about that.
Wow.
And I thought, well, see, that's being bright about the
Right.
approach.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah. And we have enough creative people. And what right division gives you is the ability to be creative because you understand the scripture
Mm-hmm.
and you can do that. So I have a great deal of confidence in us, as it were, being able to make a real contribution in the future.
That's great. That's great.
But you got to remember that you aren't just preaching to a bunch of Baptists and Methodists and Catholics.
Exactly.
You're preaching to the world, and they've been so paganized that
They're searching for something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So a similar question then. Take it just out of Christianity here in America. What about the grace movement in America and also worldwide? I mean, I think everybody that was in Southern California last February went away going, "Wow, look what's going on in India." You know, I mean, that thing. So what do you see the next 10 years there?
go ahead.
There's outreach.
Or you even thought about it? I mean, it's
Yeah, definitely think about it. We definitely.
yeah, and the grace movement here in America
Yeah.
too. I think maybe we address that a little bit, but
Yeah, I don't want to pick on India, but when you see something move that quickly,
Yeah.
you wonder.
okay.
And I've talked to David
Yeah.
and some of these guys, and they're confident that it's real. And I go, I hope so.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to believe it is. We have a guy in Nepal, young guy, and I think Kyle told me that they got 4,500 followers on the internet. One of the men in our assembly, one of
Wow.
our deacons, is kind of he laughs. He says, "I got a bank account in Nepal. I need to meet somebody there." Because that's how he transfers funds and support and stuff back and forth. And this young guy's he's in his early 20s. He's learned right division,
Wow.
and he's going like a house of fire. And when we first got in contact with him, I told Kyle, I said, I don't have time to do this. You can do it. Johnny was the original contact. And Johnny, we'd had so many disappointments, and this guy just
Right.
going like a house fire.
Yeah.
And so I guess in that case, you have to trust but verify, and be willing to extend yourself. But it's amazing in a lot of these places like that, the darkest places,
Right.
that something can go as well. You have you have to rely on the people that are there to be sure that it's real, because a lot of places, especially in the third world, in India, a lot of India is third world.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's here comes the American with the money.
Right. Well, exactly.
And I don't have any reason to think that's true of these guys, but the outreach kind of thing. And if you take, I would venture to say, if not completely, it soon will be, the majority of grace missionaries on the field are Filipinos. The grace movement is very, very strong in the Philippines.
Yeah.
It goes back into the 50s. And they've had their turmoils and their struggles like every other. And some of the institutionalized part of it has not been as good as it could be. but that spawns off people who want to be faithful. And then they go and they have I mean, if you go up into like where Richard Church goes, like up in Indonesia, and I said, it's basically Filipinos you're dealing with. And these guys have gone there and evangelized. There's some of them, there's some in Africa now, and because they're willing to go.
That's what's great to see. They're willing to go.
Yeah, our church, when it's North Shore, in the 30s, O'Hare was such a outreach guy. The Mr. Vinton, he and Sam Vinton, original, the old man, he went to Africa and stayed there all his life.
Wow.
Like 50 years, he didn't come home. He wouldn't come home with a 4-year deputation, take a vacation, raise money. And when we started at North Shore, things got going again. They said, well, let's have a missionary conference. Hadn't had one in a few years. So a young guy came over, and he's going to go to Africa, and he and his wife, they start showing pictures. And one of the ladies says, no, that's not who that is. That's so-and-so. I had him in Sunday school. And it turned out that most of the missionaries back in that era came out of North Shore Church.
Oh, wow.
It was a big church, you know.
Okay.
Gotcha.
The attendance then was the only attendance record I ever could find. Harold Edwards, who was an attorney, was a Sunday school superintendent in the 40s, and he said they ran like 1,200 in Sunday school, in the Sunday school.
Wow.
But they draw out of that, and so the idea of missions outreach outside of the country, you know, to me, the greatest mission field is here.
Right.
Because we have a couple in Lithuania now from our assembly that got saved, one right division. He translated the King James Bible in Lithuanian. We published it. He went home with it.
Oh.
He was one of our illegals. And he goes down to get his to go home, and they said, well, you're not supposed to be here to start with, so we're going to deport you. So they bought him his ticket and sent him home.
No, my gosh.
So
His first child was born here, so he's an American citizen.
Yeah.
said you can't come back for 10 years. He said, I won't plan on coming back anyway. So it was just, and that's, to me, was always funny. We have a number of Hispanics, Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, Colombians, whatever. And all of our illegals, one was French,
Really?
Canadians,
Canadians. Yeah.
Huh.
Eastern Europeans. None of our illegals were Hispanic.
Hispanic.
Really?
Which is the first thing people think about.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I'm thinking,
North,
you know,
that's
Like they came over and
all they would have come long before all this stuff back, you know, back before,
Yeah.
like in Reagan's time, people
Oh,
just
yeah.
came. It wasn't like it's been in the last few years.
Yeah.
But I always laughed about the you know, all of our illegals are.
So a couple more questions for you. You and I have talked about this a little bit. We had one of the hot Grace online ministries, I guess was they came to Salem, did a Portland meeting out here, ostensibly to get Grace people to come together and meet one another and find a local assembly. And I went, and several people affiliated with me went, and I told them, I said, you know, this organization may ask me to leave. And they can't quite figure it out. And I said, you don't need to defend me if they attack Richard or John or me. You don't need to defend me. It's not my meeting. I will just leave. We're not making a scene. People were looking at me crazy. And we got down there, and it was exactly what I thought. They didn't ask me to leave, but it was the attack. And it was not what they said. It was not about finding the local, putting everybody against. The guy was in his midst, right? And they didn't have anything to do with it. It was about building their thing. But there was a lot of very personal attacks about people that we know, and the organization that you mentioned earlier. And people were shocked that, wow, how could Grace people be like that? And then, well, you know, there's a history here. But what is your response to that? So I know we talked about something. Do you think it should be elevated? Should it be just moved on from? Because the attacks are not going to stop because.
Right. Yeah. It's always going to be there.
Yeah. The
Just
next
preach
one.
the truth.
Yeah, there you go. Just
You know.
well, that's not what you're about. You're about preaching the word, rightly divided. You're about preaching the gospel.
mm-hmm.
It's like I said earlier, when I became persona non grata, I said, our guy said, what do we do? I said, we're Shorewood. We just be Shorewood.
Right.
We just give ourselves to the work of the ministry.
Yep.
And so what about this? I said, we'll just do our work.
Yeah.
And we focused on being who we were. And these kingdom builders, you know, they're never going to end. And they're people that do stuff. And I see people teaching Grace School of Bible material all over
Okay.
who would be like that
Mhm.
toward Grace School of Bible or toward, you know, I'm Grace School of Bible.
Right.
And I said, well, yeah, thank God truth is being taught. I don't care.
Right.
They don't have to give me credit for it.
Right.
Because I didn't get credit for it. I got it out of the book or somebody taught me. You know, it's not my material. I didn't do the time past but now ages to come. Paul did. So if you give yourself to the work of the ministry that you have to do and don't worry about the rest of it. And so, well, nobody listens to you. Well, I've got a church that listens to me. I've got a wife and so forth. She listens most of the time. And he does a pretty good job of that. I listen to myself some of the time. So, you know, and the danger that I see in all that is, you know what the Plymouth Brethren were.
Mhm.
And they were very clannish.
Mhm.
It's our group, our four, no more. You know, Longview, the group was there. You got that stuff. And
That's
the channel.
I teach in a church that's the remnants of
Right.
that outcoming.
And you go back to Darby's day, and you know he and Kelly, they split up and they fight, and they got the different groups, and they were really, you know, most of the guys you're talking about are amateurs when it comes to fighting.
Yeah, no doubt. But you know, that's what we said. We had a lady called us at 7:00 the next morning, just in tears because she loved that ministry, and she said, "I can't believe what happened yesterday." And we were on vacation with some people when it happened, and we got there, and he went on. I didn't think he really cared one way or the other, and he went off on that. And then we got back, and it was just shocking. It was interesting because people had heard me tell the history and they couldn't understand some of this, and then to actually see it. And I said, and that's what basically what the advice was. Okay, guys, that's fine. That's what they're doing. They're not here. They're back. They're back there. How does that affect you today?
Yeah.
Okay. If they say somebody believes something, you've heard what they say that I believe. You know, I don't believe what they say that I believe.
Yeah.
So why would you think this? And you know, essentially, anyhow, that's not. So last question. You guys have meant so much to so many. You know, I wrote down earlier today. We were laughing about something. You know, I really came to learn myself. My grandma got me here, my dad, but I came to learn right division from consistently coming to these conferences and hearing this information. And, you know, I've always said, you know, we don't have an hierarchy. That's right. But John is the boss on the West Coast. Is that right? You know?
That's what I tell people.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, and if I have mentors, they're you two. And you and I talked about something, and you said that the Pastor Jordan was your pastor. So, and I'd like to expand on that a little bit. What do you guys mean to each other?
Say it again.
What do you guys mean to each other that you would want to share? I'm not asking for that. I see the relationship between you two, and the rest of us see the relationship between you. Maybe talk a little bit about that, what your relationship means, and how it's helped you in your own ministries.
Well, I can tell you, me, this is a person, I'm a hyper introvert. I can sit in a room of 100 people and nobody talk to me, and I'm just as happy as I can be. If you say you got to go talk to 20 people, now I'm, because that's me. And on Sunday morning, I'll finish preaching. I take my Bible and put it in the office, and I make myself go out and greet people instead of, my preference would be to sit there and start thinking about tonight. That's just me. And I don't call and contact and do all that kind of stuff with people to ingratiate. John's a friend. The last time I saw him, the next time I said we're exactly the same. And we like there's some time between. And if there's a problem, either he'll or I'll one of us can let each other know. But when I see you, next time I see you, it'll be just like this time. It won't be like I had to keep up relationships, and that I appreciate because that's a real fellowship.
Right.
And frankly, for me, it's more important to have that kind of relationship. We'll have eternity to chat. Right now, we got work to do.
Yeah.
And if he's giving himself to the work, you're giving yourself to the work. I know you guys. I appreciate the fellowship we have in the Lord and what personally, and the fact that it's, like I said, you don't have to maintain it; it's there. And so for me, I've had the privilege of having that kind of relationship with a lot of guys that I really value and cherish and appreciate in the ministry. And like I said, I tell people, West Coast, look to John. I tell them anywhere, look to him, because of the value of the teaching ministry, and that's what I appreciate in him. I don't really understand his passion for motorcycles.
She paid him.
But that's okay. But I appreciate the ability that we can just be ourselves. We don't have to put on a mask.
There you go.
Try to be somebody we're not. And
With regard to, like, from my perspective too, is that, and this is somewhat difficult to say because, like, my dad passed away about a year or so ago. And I know my dad loved me and I loved my dad. And we had a big family, lots of kids, come out of a Roman Catholic background. Of course, he never taught me the Bible, things like that. And again, this is going to go out publicly, so I'm guarding what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to
Only.
a certain degree,
Yeah.
but, he taught me what he believed at that level and everything. And I know people talk about so-and-so was their, this was their father. Well, Pastor Jordan is my spiritual father.
Yeah. And it has it has eternal value.
Absolutely.
well, I feel like a father-son relationship. Paul talked to Timothy about my son in the faith, and and that's a privilege. And the authenticity of that, the privilege of it, the realness of it, the connection of it. And when you're from the South, you don't tell people. You tell your family you love them. You tell your friends you appreciate them.
Yeah.
But that love and appreciation, comes because of who we are in Christ.
Right.
And I think of his wife like I think of my wife as a faithful partner.
Amen.
And you couldn't have that without that spiritual relationship. So, and
I was going to say that part of this whole interview, for our dear wives, what they mean to
Oh.
us, we're just,
Yeah.
she was instrumental in leading me to Christ.
Right.
And then when we were introduced to the grace message very early on, she saw it immediately, and I didn't at all. I fought it big time, and I think if there was ever any time she asked the Lord to knock me over the head.
And you sent the Texas Cowboys.
Yeah,
But can I say that through the years, my husband has been beaten up,
Yeah.
and John's always been there.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Faithful servant.
He's been, but what's bound them together is that book
Amen.
Yes.
Exactly.
100%.
and the message of the glorious gospel, the grace of God, and the truth of it, but the honesty in John's outlook and with the Bible and his use of the Bible and letting God's word teach him, but letting my husband teach him, but just being there to just say, I'm here if you need, if you need us. And just to always standing there and supporting him.
Faithful servant. That's what you
You
are,
know,
John.
when he left the Bible Society, the comment was made, Jordan will just go away and you'll never hear from him again. And he'll just fade off the scene. Well, that didn't
That
happen.
didn't happen.
But it wasn't him, it was the
The word.
message and the word and that's what John has in it, is just the honesty with it of, okay, this is God's word, rightly divided. This is Paul's message. This is us. And like I said, you just don't even have to think about the fact that John might not be there
Mm-hmm.
and might not be there to back him up
Yeah.
and stand. We're looking at life changing and backing down. The ministry is in good hands.
Yeah.
To have men that you work with that you know would do what you would have done if you were in the circumstances
Yeah.
Yeah.
is something that's priceless. And I feel that way about John, Alex. Like I said, I'm fortunate to have the opportunity to work with guys that represent that.
Yeah.
And
You two are great mentors. Yeah.
That's why.
That's why.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's
You're,
why.
you're just as steadfast and faithful.
Yeah, because I'm not an organizer. In fact, as I've stepped back from some of the leadership at Shorewood, I'm writing the board a review of the things that I think I didn't get done. And most of it functions around organizing certain things that I think need to be done, but I knowing myself, I didn't have the capacity to do them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't do that. I did things I knew I could do. But that working together is a wonderful thing. I knew your grandma and your grandpa, and they'd be very, excited to see the message going on. And
You guys were talking about the work of the ministry, right? We talked about it this morning.
yeah.
Perfected saints to do the work of the ministry,
By the
the
way,
edification of the body of Christ.
well, we used to meet up in Canada. Your grandma and your grandpa always brought an ice chest full of Dr. Pepper.
I knew I was going to hear it. I knew it. I just knew it.
And a bag of moon pies.
Oh, and Dennis and Sharon and Teresa aren't here. Aren't here. Dennis and Sharon have passed away, and Teresa's not here now to do that. I've been waiting for 2 years for that Dr. Pepper comment to be made.
And that was all because of them.
It's not supposed to have it.
But they're the ones that got you to like it.
No,
No, but
they
they always
knew I
brought
did
it.
like it, and they knew I couldn't get it up there.
Okay.
So they always brought that ice
Okay.
chest full of Dr. Pepper and
Even way
bag of
back
moon
then,
pies.
Across
Across the
Dr.
border
Pepper.
to Canada. So
Wow.
That was fantastic.
Smuggled it across back when it was
That's
easy to do.
fantastic. Yeah, okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for taking the time to do this. It means a lot to me, and it'll mean a lot to people that are there. We had several people online that made some nice comments. Going forward, people will watch it, and it's so. I know Brian's doing that great history, but I think it's great to when we have the opportunity to come together and talk a little informally.
Yeah.
One thing April and I always talk about is, when we go to conferences, we try not to pigeonhole you, could let other people, because we have maybe a little different access than some people, but this way other people can get the access and see, and you're just not caricatures on the TV, even if there's life to these people that they watch if they don't get to meet. So thank you for taking the time. And with that, we'll end there. And thank you everybody that was being here, and we'll be back on at about 6:30 tonight. Is that right? 6:45. Okay. So thank you everybody, and thank you all.
Okay, let's get on with the program.